Welcome back to another episode of Opalwave MTG, a channel dedicated to exploring power levels in EDH and helping you tune your deck to your meta. Today's episode is going to be about Jodah the Unifier, which is a Wooburg or 5-color wizard with legendary creatures you control get +X/+X, where X is the number of legendary creatures you control. Whenever you cast a legendary spell from your hand, exile cards from the top of your library until you exile a legendary non-land card with lesser mana value. You may cast that card without paying its mana cost, put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. And this commander was recommended by the Wiznerd from Reddit, so huge shout out to you, thanks for the recommendation. We got some really cool decks that I brewed here today. Each one is very different in terms of how it functions. As usual, the deck lists are in the description below. And if you want to help support my channel, check out my Fiverr. That will also be in the description below. And with that, let's go ahead and get started. For the Skirmish version of Jodah, we did something a little bit weird with it. We went with a background Voltron tribal kind of deck. So as you can see, we've got a bunch of backgrounds in our enchantment section. Basically just all of these backgrounds are going to make Jodah even stronger, give him more abilities. Yeah, so a lot of really cool stuff here. We've got the Enchantress Presence as well. That will trigger whenever we cast one of these backgrounds. But because of Jodah's ability, you find another background and you cast that in addition to the background that you cast. So if you have like an Enchantress Presence or Verdant Enchantress or a Mesa Enchantress, you are going to get 2 draws off of your 1 enchantment. So that's pretty good. And then we've also got the Shannon Sleeper's Scourge, which also does pretty much the same thing, where you get to draw a card whenever you cast a legendary spell. So we get to double up on those draw triggers. Going to be really cool. We've added a Hannah Ship's Navigator and Kethis as a little bit of reanimation for our legendary stuff, as well as the artifacts and enchantments. Raf Capuchin gives our historic spells flash. Really cool. Captain Leonard Storm's a little bit of extra ramp, and a Garth, just because I wanted to throw in another 5-color dude in here. He gives us a lot of utility, and a Sisay that we can use to start tutoring up the other backgrounds if we really need to. With the sorcery, is pretty straightforward. We got a few ramp spells: Farseek, Katam's Reach, Cultivate, as well as 2 removal spells: Blasphemous Act and Urza's Ruinous Blast. Ruinous Blast is actually super sweet since it is a legendary spell, so it will trigger Jodah, and then you'll hit a legendary card, and then the card you hit off Jodah's ability won't get removed by the Urza's Blast because it only exiles non-legendary permanents or non-land permanents. Then in the instance, just really straightforward removal. We got a Negate, Beast Within, Generator's Gift, and a Chaos Warp as just catch-all removal type spells. And an Alchemist Retrieval and a Blink of an Eye that can just bounce things our opponents control that we don't want them to have. And they can also be used to bounce our own stuff. So if we want to get an additional Jodah trigger off of one of our own backgrounds, we can do that with one of these cards. So a lot of nice utility going on there. With the artifacts, pretty straightforward in terms of the ramp. We get 3-drop ramp, 2-drop ramp, the usual suspects. And then we've got a few legendary equipment, stuff like Blackblade Reforged, Imbercleave, Wand of Orcus, a lot of really cool legendary stuff like Alhamrad's Archive, which can double up our Enchantress triggers. Azor's Gateway I thought would be another really fun one. And the Book of Vile Darkness, which can create Vecna, which is an 8/8 black zombie creature god with Indestructible that has the passive or triggered abilities of Hand of Vecna, Eye of Vecna, and the Book of Vile Darkness. So a really sweet card. It gives us just a little bit of a flavor there in terms of legendary stuff. And a Tamio's Journal, which lets us investigate at the beginning of our upkeeps, and if we can sacrifice 3 clue and just tutor for anything we want to. So a really nice card here. And with our backgrounds, just a lot of backgrounds that are going to give us some utility, stuff like Candlekeep Saga or Sage, where we can get a lot of draw power. Tavern Brawl give us a little bit of card advantage as well. Cards like Cloakwood Hermit can help us make our boards bigger. We can do Veteran Soldier, which again will give us a little bit more token production as well as making our dudes bigger, or our Jodah bigger, stuff like Criminal Past and Haunted One. There's also that 1 mana enchantment background that gives your commander +2/+3, ward 3, flying, and but it also gains like sacrifice a creature at the beginning of your upkeep. If you want to try and include that one, you could. I thought it was a little risky since we don't have a ton of token production in here. I thought it would create some awkward situations where you cascade into it and then you know, you don't have a creature to sacrifice, so you just have to sacrifice Jodah. So that'd be kind of awkward. So I did not include that one. But yeah, a lot of really fun legendary stuff that we can just cascade into and get a lot of value off of Jodah's ability. In the lands, we've included all of the Dominaria tap lands essentially. Figured why not? 5 color, might as well use them. And we've got a bunch of the tri-lands as well as the snow duels that we can use as well, and a bunch of basics just to, you know, so we have some lands that are entering untapped, but it's Skirmish, it's the lower power level, so we don't really, you know, it's not like there's any rush to get your lands out untapped or anything like that. So moving on to the battle version of Jodah, this one is also pretty sweet. I decided to go with pretty much a Planeswalker tribal. So we've got our Planeswalkers here as like a main kind of theme, a lot of really strong Planeswalkers. And we've also got a Valki, God of Lies. So Valki is going to be our only 2-drop legendary card in the deck. And that is because with Jodah's ability, if you legendary cascade or whatever his ability is, if you find Valki off of his ability, you can cast the backside of Valki for free. And the backside of Valki, I'm just going to do it over here, is Tibalt, Cosmic Imposter, which is 7 mana, but you get to cast it for free because of Jodah's ability. So super sweet card there. So essentially this is a hidden commander type of situation where Valki is our hidden commander, and we're just trying to cheat out Tibalt, Cosmic Imposter as much as possible. And we've got, you know, a bunch of 3 mana Planeswalkers here that we can use to guarantee that we are casting our Valki. Some of the 3-cost stuff like Peregrine Dynamo, Squee, which can come back to our hand and guarantee that we're going to hit that again. Pier is also really good, and Mila is also pretty sweet since they'll both help us basically get more counters on our Planeswalkers. And we do have a few combos, so if you've seen my Nicol Bolas Dragon God deck tech, we're actually going to use one of those combos in this deck as well. So essentially with Nicol Bolas Dragon God and a Jace Cunning Castaway, as well as the Chain Veil, Oath of Teferi, or Doubling Season, you can essentially make infinite Dragon Gods and exile your opponent's boards and hands. So how it's going to work, because Nicol Bolas gains all abilities of all other planeswalkers, sorry. And so you'll plus him up to draw a card. He'll go from 4 to 5. And then you can activate the -5 on Jace to create 2 tokens that are copies of Nicol Bolas. So then now you have 2 Nicol Bolases. And if you can activate your Planeswalker abilities twice, you can plus up your Nicol Bolas and then minus your Nicol Bolas, plus them, minus them. If you have either the Vorinclex or the Doubling Season, they'll just enter with enough counters to immediately activate the Jace ult, essentially. And from there, you can, you know, you'll keep plussing, you'll draw cards, your opponents will exile stuff, and eventually they don't have anything else to exile, and from that point you just win. So another combo we can do is with Jace Architect of Thought plus Doubling Season and a Wheel of Sun and Moon. So Wheel of Sun and Moon, enchant player, if a card would be put into enchanted player's graveyard, instead it's revealed and put on the bottom of their library. So we enchant ourselves, and then with a Doubling Season out, we'll cast our Jace. He's going to enter with 8 counters because they get doubled. And then you're going to ult your Jace. And so for each player, you can search that player's library for a non-land card and exile it. Then that player shuffles, you may cast those cards without paying their mana costs. And since Jace dies due to state-based actions before this ability resolves, you can search your own library and find the Jace Architect of Thought again, and then you can cast them for free. So from here, he's going to enter with 8 counters again, and you can ult him, and you can do that over and over and over again until you have cast all of the cards in your opponent's libraries, because it says for each player. So a really cool combo that we can do there. And then just a bunch of other utility type planeswalkers, Liliana, Elspeth, Ugin, all really strong. Even though they aren't 3 costs, it's nice to be able to cast some bigger costs that we can get some more value out of Jodah's ability, so it's not, purely for Tibalt essentially. Then we've got Captain Sisay as a way for tutoring, and just a few other ramp options with the Bloomtender and the Faeburrow Elder. Moving on to the sorceries, we've got the Blasphemous Act and the Urza's Ruinous Blast still, as well as the Cleansing Nova, since we are doing like a Planeswalker type thing. Keeping the boards clear is going to be really nice. And then we've added a few tutors like Call of the Gatewatch, Search for Glory, and Time of Need, which can find Planeswalkers and or legendary creatures. And we've also upgraded our ramp, moved from the 3-drop ramp to the 2-drop ramp, Nature's Lore, and 3 visits. And then in case our Tibalt goes to our graveyard, we've got stuff like Gaia's Blessing and Blessed Respite, and the Croson Reclamation, which can shuffle cards from your graveyard into your library. From there you can cast another 3-drop legendary, and boom, you've got your Valky out again. Or your Tibalt rather, sorry. Fire Prophecy is also really nice. If you got the Valky in your hand and you don't want to cast it, you can just use Fire Prophecy to put it back onto the bottom of your library, and then you can cascade into it again. And we've upgraded our ramp, definitely added more ramp, but we've also added more efficient ramp. Added another Cyclonic Rift and the Aether Spouts as additional ways to bounce creatures and board states essentially. And we've also got the Pull from Tomorrow, so in case Valky gets exiled for some crazy reason, you can put Valky back into your graveyard and start the shenanigans again. And the artifacts, just did a few upgrades here. Still got the Coalition Relic and the Chromatic Lantern. I added a Felwar Stone. We've also added this Elixir of Immortality, which is another way for us to shuffle our graveyard back into our library, and a Bow of Nylea. Kind of has 2 purposes here. First one, it is a legendary 3 cost, which will guarantee our Valky. Another thing it does is, with the last ability, you can put up to 4 target cards from your graveyard in the bottom of your library in any order. So another really great way to repeatably put Valky back into our library if it is removed. And again, we've got that Chain Veil to, one, it's just really good in the context of a Planeswalker deck, but it's also a combo piece for us. In the enchantments, we've got the Doubling Season, the Oath of Teferi, and the Wheel of Sun that I was talking about before in terms of win conditions. And then we've got the Rhystic Study and the Sylvan Library for a little bit of extra card advantage. And an Oath of Liliana. Again, another 3-drop enchantment that is legendary, so it can guarantee our Valky. It'll also force each opponent to sacrifice a creature, and because you're going to hit Valky at the end of the turn, you're going to make a 2/2 black zombie creature token, so another blocker. So in addition to kind of helping clear the board, you're also going to get something to block with your Valky, so really great utility there. In the lands, we've added a bunch of shock lands, as well as the battle, or the pain lands rather, where you can either tap them for colorless or pay have it deal a damage to you to add either color, as in addition to the basics that we have from before, and a few of the other tap lands if we need them. Before I move on to the glory version of Jodah, if you like my content and you feel like you've gained a little bit more perspective on power levels in EDH, be sure to like, subscribe, and leave a comment letting me know what commander you'd like to see me brew next. And moving on to the glory version of Jodah, we're gonna do like a 5-color zoo type build with a focus on legendary creatures, and that way we can utilize the first ability of Jodah a little bit more than the previous versions are going to. So we've got a lot of legendary creatures that have stacks kind of tacked onto them, stuff like Grand Arbiter, Limvala, Kunaros, Yasharn, really powerful legendary stacks type creatures that we can use with high impact. So when we're casting one stacks piece, we're going to be able to hit another stacks piece. It's going to be really strong. Then we've also got Najeela and Derevi, which is a really efficient combo to help us close out the game. So while Najeela is just really strong on her own, if you have a Derevi out and say like a Faeburrow Elder or Bloomtender or just enough warriors on the field to get enough untap so you can untap your lands when they hit an opponent, and then from there you can use the mana to activate Najeela, and from there you can make infinite combat steps and just kill your opponents with infinite combat steps, making infinite amount of warriors. We've still got the Valky, just because if we do happen to hit it off of one of our 3 or greater costs, we're going to be able to cast that Tibalt Cosmic Imposter, which could be pretty brutal in the cEDH game, being able to steal other people's stuff. We've also got a Jetmir Nexus of Revels, which can help us kind of close out games. Since we are a creature heavy deck, we'll be able to go wide pretty easily, and even if you don't hit like the 9 creature total, your creatures gaining vigilance and trample is super strong. We've also got this Varagoth, which can put a target player will search for library for a card, put it on top of their library, so you can use that to set up your Jodah triggers, or you can use it with an opposition agent in terms of just searching out your opponent's libraries for win cons or answers or what have you. So pretty much a pretty straightforward stacks kind of deck in 5 color. The big issue here is we don't get to run Rule of Law effects like Archon of Emirian, stuff like that, mainly because our commander is going to have us cast twice in a turn most of the time. So a little unfortunate there, but overall we still get to run a lot of really strong stacks pieces in the deck. Sorcerers are pretty straightforward. We got a Demonic Tutor, Eldritch Evolution, and a Finale of Devastation for your tutors. Pretty straightforward. A Winds of Abandon. I think this card, every time you see me brewing a deck in cEDH and I've got white, I'm going to be running this card. I think it's so good. One-sided board wipe, and you don't really see a lot of basics running around in cEDH in general. And so especially if you're playing against like Winota or other very creature heavy stacks, this is going to be a great way to break through. Moving on to the instance, we've got a lot of really efficient removal at this point. We don't have a lot of blue cards in the deck, so I didn't want to include like Force of Will or anything like that. But we do have like Fire Covenant, Assassin Trophy, Abrupt Decay, Braid, really efficient, strong removal spells that we can use, as well as a few extra tutors like Elder Army's Call and a Worldly Tutor. Moving on to the artifacts, we've got the Chrome Mox, Mox Diamond, Mana Crypt, and a Soul Ring, just to help us get out some of our stacks pieces a little bit quicker. Since we are primarily on mana dorks in terms of our ramp, we also have the Kataki Wars Wage, which will make artifact strategies have a little bit of a hard time because they'll have to pay extra mana during their upkeep for each artifact. So we don't really want to run a ton of artifacts, but we still do want to be able to get out like a turn 1 Drannith Magistrate or a turn 1 Lavinia potentially. And the enchantments, we've got a Deafening Silence, which is the one Rule of Law effect that we can run, just because it's going to make non-creature spells. You can only cast 1 non-creature spell a turn, so it's going to be really good there. Since we want to cast multiple creature spells in turn, we'll play around this really well. We've got the Mystic Remora added, in addition to the Ristic Study and the Sylvan Library for extra card advantage, and a Survival of the Fittest. Since we are a very creature-heavy deck, we'll be able to tutor out whatever creatures we need in a given situation, and potentially help us get more Jodah triggers, turning our dorks into legendary creatures and stuff like that. In the lands, we're actually pretty high on our land count here, just because we're a slower kind of stacksier deck. Guaranteeing land drops is going to be pretty good, and I also wanted to add 2 forests and a plains just for the Yasharn trigger, so we can do that. And also it's really good in case there's like a Blood Moon or Magus of the Moon or something like that. You don't see them too often anymore, but you still don't want to get caught with your pants down essentially by not running at least 1 basic in a deck. But yeah, pretty much all our lands as usual are entering untapped. We've got our OG duels, we got the shock lands, we got fetch lands, and we're just making choices essentially based on what our primary colors are. Like I'm not running Steam Vents or Volcanic Island just because of our color requirements. So yeah, thanks for checking out this episode of Opal Wave MTG. Again, I'm your host Jacob, and until next time.